History Inside a Nutshell, the show where we sail into our port of call discussing maritime history.
Avis Dolphin, the brave, the loyal, and the Lusitania. On the 7th of May 1915, the RMS Lusitania sank in the North Atlantic Ocean near the old head of Kinsale after she was struck by a torpedo from the German submersible U-20. Out of the 124 children that were on board, only 30 survived. One survivor, and arguably the most infamous child, was Avis Dolphin. Avis's story is famously featured in the 2007 documentary Lusitania, Terror at Sea. But behind the dramatic events that occurred 88 years earlier, Avis's time off and on board the Lusitania during the sinking was more traumatic. Her grandparents even predicted the sinking and how Avis got herself into danger and survived. If it hadn't been for a friend whom she bonded, Avis wouldn't have survived, and if she did, she would have been on her own. This is the story of Avis Dolphin. Avis Dolphin was born in Yorkshire, UK on the 24th of August 1902. At the age of 6 or 7, she emigrated with her parents to Canada, where she lived until the spring of 1915. By that time, Avis was 12, and her mother thought that Avis needed an English education, and it was decided that she would emigrate back to the UK and live with her grandparents. However, because she was occupied in a nursing home, Avis's mother hired 2 employees, Hilda Ellis and Sarah Smith, to accompany Avis as the ladies were planning to travel to the UK for a holiday. Avis, Hilda and Sarah travelled to New York City, where they boarded the British Cunard liner, the RMS Lusitania, on the 1st of May 1915. All wasn't smooth sailing as Avis was feeling seasick. Despite her seasickness, Avis had befriended a professor and a lecturer named Ian Holborn, who would entertain her by telling her stories of the Isle of Fola and his family. On the 7th of May, Avis and Professor Holborn were having lunch and coffee in the second-class dining saloon when the ship was struck by a torpedo. The impact of the torpedo was so violent that the dishes crashed to the floor. There were a few screams in the dining saloon, but in response, the steward shouted, "No danger, keep to your seats." But the screaming passengers scrambled out of the dining saloon to get to the lifeboats, except for Avis, Hilda and Sarah, who were instructed by Holborn to stay where they are. When Professor Holborn returned to them after learning about the situation, he guided Avis, Hilda and Sarah to his cabin, where he offered them lifebelts. The group then went on to the boat deck, where Professor Holborn helped Avis to put on her lifebelt. He then tried to persuade either Hilda or Sarah to take his lifebelt. Sarah refused the professor, who said that his life was more value than hers because of his wife and 3 sons. Professor Holborn guided Avis and the 2 women to reach a lifeboat on the port side, but they were unsuccessful in finding one. So they went to the starboard side, where Avis, Hilda and Sarah found and boarded lifeboat number 17. Before the lifeboat was launched, Professor Holborn kissed Avis and told her to find his wife and children and kiss them goodbye for him. While the lifeboat was lowering, it capsized when several men tried to jump in. The lifeboat then overturned and it threw everyone into the sea. Avis almost drowned in the water when she was being dragged down in a vortex, but by miracle she survived thanks to her lifebelt. Avis later recalled that while in the water, she witnessed people freezing to death. She was pulled into a life raft, and after a while she was put into a rescue boat. When she was in the boat, Avis would witness mothers in distress after losing their babies. Sadly, Sarah and Hilda didn't survive. Avis and Professor Holborn, who also survived, were reunited in Queenstown. When she was there, Avis sent a telegram to her auntie and her mother. Later, after his recovery from his side effects of prolonged time in the water, Professor Holborn accompanied Avis for the rest of her journey, where she was reunited with her grandparents in Worcester. Avis and Professor Holborn remained lifelong friends until his death in 1935. Avis moved to Edinburgh, where she was in education, and then she moved to Snowdonia in 1979, where she died there on the 5th of February 1996. Avis Dolphin had lived a fascinating life, but it is hard to imagine how a 12-year-old child would witness a sinking like the Lusitania. However, Avis and her friendship with Ian Holborn is an example of how friendship is special in the darkest of times, especially during a world war.
If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe for future videos. Until next time, this has been History Inside a Nutshell, departing from the docks. Thank you so much for all of your support and enjoy the rest of your voyage.